Alright guys, welcome back after that short break. As indicated earlier on, we will now be looking at budget. Now let's see what is indicated here. Now let's quickly get familiar with some definition and information that is important to you. So first we have here, where I say a budget is a list of expected income and expenditure. Right, and then we'll also look at income and expenditure statement. Now, an income and expenditure statement is a list of the actual income and expenditure. So I hope you see the difference here. Budget is expected income and expenditure, whereas your income and expenditure statement is a list of your actual income and expenditure. Then we are saying profit is when your income is more than your expenditure, and then we have the opposite of profit, and that is a loss. And that is when your expenses are more than your income. We also indicated here the formula to calculate your profit or your loss is where you take your income minus all your expenditure. Also important, when we or a business want to compare the profit and income, we calculate the profit margin. Now let's quickly look at what the profit margin is. A profit margin basically provides a means for comparing business performance over different time intervals. And also important, there's a formula that we can use to calculate the profit margin. So how do we calculate the profit margin? We take the profit divided by the income multiplied by 100. All right. Now let's put all of this into practice. Now here's our first example. I'm saying this is a copy of Elijah Sport Shop's budget for the month of February 2023. Now there's a little note for you. I said, take time to carefully study the given information. Now, if you look at it, it's a budget. On our left-hand side of the budget, we listed our income. And as you can see, income is from the sales. And the income amounts to 715,900 Rand. Also, there's no other income, and therefore the total income amounts to 715,900 Rand. Then, on our right-hand side, we have all the expenses. Right, so there's A expenses. Further down, we also have our B expenses. All right, so we'll elaborate on that just now. So on the first expenses here, we have rent, advertising, salaries, and then we have the subtotal. Then on our B expenses, we have stock purchases, telephone, electricity, water, and incidentals. Then again, the subtotal. And then lastly, we have the total expenses. Also important to note here is that we have some missing values, A, B, C, and D. All right, so there we looked at what this budget is all about. Now let's look at the first question. It says, name the type of expenses labeled A and B. So if I look, there is A. If I look at A, all the expenses listed here, we can see rent, advertising, and so on. That will be your fixed expenses. So therefore I'll indicate A is all my fixed expenses. Okay. Then we are not done with this question. We also have to indicate what is B called, right? So therefore B, looking at stock purchases, telephones, electricity, water, and incidentals, we can say then B is our variable expenses. So it's important for you to study your terminology, your definition, so that this becomes easier. Let's move on to the next question. In question 1.2, I'm saying here, calculate advertising expense, that is C, as you can see here, right? If it is 20% less than the salary expense. So if I look at the budget, our salary here is 40,000 Rand for the month. And we are saying that the advertising expense is 20% less of that. So step number one, let's first see what is 20% of our 40,000. So therefore, I'll start by saying 20%, so that's 20 over 100. Off means that I multiply, and I multiply that by 40,000, which is now my salary expense. Okay, grab your calculator and please work with me, see that you get the same answer. So I'm going to type in 20 divided by 100, multiply by 40,000. That will give me an answer of 8,000 Rand. Remember, that doesn't mean now that your advertising expense is 8,000 Rand. The advertising expense is 20% less than that. So therefore, I take my 40,000, which is my salary expense. There I indicate 40,000, minus the 8,000, and I arrive, if I look at this, at an answer of 32,000 rand. Okay, so therefore, your advertising expense in this case equals 32,000 rand. And please note, guys, it's always important, go and write in, especially here where the missing value is. Then you know, moving forward, you have the answer with you. So I hope that is clear. Moving on now to question number 3. It says, determine the value of stock purchase, that is D. So here is D. Right. So looking at what is indicated here, starting with our expenses, variable expenses, so it's this part here, right? We know the subtotal is 412,000. So therefore, I'll take my 412,000 and I'm going to subtract all the known values. So minus 5,642 minus 3,200 rand and 69 cents minus your that next value is 1,920 rand and 78 cents minus your 10,367 rand. Now let's see what will that amounts to. So again, I'm going to type in 412,000 minus your 5,642 rand minus 3,200 rand and 69 cents minus 1,920 rand and 78 cents minus 10,367 rand. So that will give us a total of 390,869 rand and 53 cents. So I hope that is clear to all of you. I took the 412,000, the total of the variable expenses, and I subtracted all the known values from that amount. All right, so let's quickly move on to the next question. Here we are saying, is Elijah's sports shop expected to make a profit in February 2023? Show all your calculations. Right? So first of all, how do we calculate profit or loss? We say profit or loss is basically where we take all the income minus your expenditure or your expenses. Okay, so in this case, straightforward, we know the income is 715,900 rand minus. So now we have a little bit of a challenge here. We have total expenses and we can see we don't know that value. All right, so now I already have the subtotal of your variable expenses, but now I still need the subtotal of your fixed expenses. So that should be simple. I'm going to do it here. So I'm going to quickly type or write down for you. So I'm going to use the rent, that is 25,300 rand, 25,300. Plus, remember, we calculated the advertising cost, right, or expense to be 32,000. So I'm going to add the 32,000 plus the 40,000 plus 3,100 rand to see what my subtotal will be. So, okay, so 25,300 plus 32,000 plus 40,000, and then also I'm going to add the last 3,100 for the insurance. So that will take us to 100,400 rand. So that will be the subtotal for your fixed expenses. So therefore, to get the total expenses as listed here, I'm going to take my 100,400 rand plus the variable expenses, the subtotal of that is already given 412,000 rand. Let's add the two together. So it's 100,400 rand plus 412,000. So that will give you a total expense of 512,400 rand. So I'm going to repeat that. You take your 100,400 rand plus the 412,000 rand, and that should give you a total of 512,400 rand. So now I take the income of 715,900, and I'm going to subtract my expense of 512,400 rand. Now let's type that in on our calculator. So I'm going to say 715,900 minus the 512,400 rand, that should give you 203,500 rand. Here we can see that our income is more than our expenses, so therefore we can conclude by saying that Elijah's Sports Shop will definitely make a profit. So I hope that is clear to you guys. All right, guys, let's take a short break. After the break, we will continue with budgets. See you soon.